Hey, this is Matt Cox, and this is The Grind. Today's video is about hope. And I may have told this story before on a podcast or something. I don't think so, but it strikes me as a funny story. So I got a lot of buddies who will ask me, and it's not just buddies, but I mean, a lot of people ask me, like, how'd you do 12 and a half years, bro? Man, I couldn't do it. Well, first of all, you could do it. You'd be shocked at what you can do. But secondly, and when I've said this before, they're going to make you do it. So it's really effortless on your part. If it were to come up, which I hope to God it never does. Of course, nobody ever really sees it coming. In my case, I just thought I was so smart, so bright, so sharp. They were never going to catch me. I was way wrong about that. But part of what I think gets you through it is obviously hope. Now, I was lucky because I didn't have like a wife and 3 kids that were struggling. Those are the guys that have the worst. But so once I realized, okay, you may be down for a while or for the long haul, and I actually started kind of finding a purpose. That kind of gave me a purpose, and it gave me something to do to occupy my time. The guys that have the worst are the guys that, like, let's say 1, they're completely guilty. 2, they've exhausted their appeals, their 2255s, all the actions, and basically you've got a life sentence. You have nobody on the outside. You have no friends or family, and you're just void of hope. I mean, there's just no hope. It's basically like, put in for a 2-man cube, join a softball team, you're doing all your time. You hope that maybe the laws may change, but the truth is, if you're extremely guilty and you have a life sentence, and sometimes you just have it coming. It's just what you've got. You murdered a couple of people, you're 100% guilty, you're just done. And I'm not saying those 2 people don't deserve to be in prison for life, but they're just void of hope. They have no hope of getting out. And so, as a result, for those people, they're in a worse situation. But most people, hope is what gets you through it. Whether it's false hope or not, it's still some kind of hope that something might change. So I had this friend named Nico. Nico used to bring guys to me because Nico was a smart guy. So a lot of guys would come to him and give him like business ideas. They'd tell him business ideas like, hey man, I got a business idea, this and that. Nico was like a really nice guy, and he doesn't want to tell these guys you don't have a prayer. So he would tell them, let's talk to my buddy Matt. They'd be like, oh, Matt, Cox is the guy who writes stories, or Cox, the guy that teaches a real estate class, because I taught the real estate class. And they go, yeah, he's a smart guy. He'll hear you out. And they would come to me, and he'd sit with them and with me, and then they'd tell me their plan, and it was always just horrible. He used to call me the dream crusher. I would sit there and I just tear apart their because it was always some guy who's never worked in a restaurant, who wants to open a restaurant. He can't cook. But in his mind, he's going to open up a restaurant and be super successful, even though like 3 out of 4 new restaurants fail in the first 3 years or something ridiculous. And those are people that actually have money and experience behind them. This guy's got nothing. And then they would always be like, I go, well, where are you going to get the money to maintain, to even be able to survive the first 5 years, which is basically going to be a loss. They would then say, oh, I got some buddies that, I can get the money. So you're either going to raise money from your friends and family, which is a great way to lose your friends and family, or you're going to sell drugs, which is what got you in here in the first place, to try and fund this restaurant, which is what a lot of the rappers and stuff do. They sell drugs until they make it big in the rap game, and then, of course, then maybe they take off, or maybe they end up just getting busted for drugs and going to prison for 10 years. I mean, so it just depends. But it's funny because a lot of guys would come to me and say, well, Matt, Cox will just tell you how it is. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. I've heard some guys who have told me ideas that I thought were phenomenal. I was like, that's an amazing idea. And you've got the ability to pull it off, and it wouldn't cost much, and this and this. So, but a lot of times there's just crap. Anyway, so here's what I'm getting at. But those guys would lay in bed at night, and that was their hope or their dream was, I'm going to get out, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. And, I don't want to piss on your on your dreams, but you have to be reasonable. So a lot of guys would come to me just to try and hear like the truth, which is like a lot of stuff that I do on these podcasts. It's just the truth. This is the way it is. If you want to live in fantasy land, then you'd go talk to somebody else. I'm not going to tell you some bullshit. I only reason I even mentioned this is because I was driving the other day and I was thinking about this guy, and I don't know if his whole name, but I remember his last name was Shorter. He was just a normal guy. He wasn't he broke the law, but he wasn't like a criminal type guy. He was just a hardworking guy. I remember some of the specifics of his case, but not all of them. So in a general way, I'll tell you what happened based on my recollection, which could be wrong, but it's probably pretty close. He owned a trucking company. He had one truck, and he was picking up stuff for Johnson & Johnson in Atlanta, pretty sure. So he's picking stuff up at either their warehouse or a factory or something, and he delivered it to stores or factories. I don't know exactly what he was delivering, but he was picking stuff up and delivering it. So here's the interesting thing about him, is he one time, he'd been doing it for years, like 2-3 years, and he said, it's an okay living. It's a lot of work, but it's okay. You don't make a lot of money. So he said, but one day he had put in the wrong invoice. He said, I had delivered like 6 pallets or something, and you charge per delivery or per pallet. And he said like something had happened where it's like if you delivered 2 pallets to a store, you got to charge them for each pallet, not the delivery. So he said somehow or another he got confused, and he ended up charging them for like 6 pallets to one store when actually it was like 2 pallets. And he said they paid him, and he was like, he remembered, he said, I thought back and I was like, they paid me too much. He went back and checked and thought, oh, my invoice was wrong. But he didn't say anything. So he waited and waited and waited. And he said, maybe a month or so later, he said, stuck at another one and added 2 pallets. The 2 pallets was an extra like $250 or $300. So each pallet was like $300, so he got an extra $600. Well, then my computer just shut off for no reason. I got like it's like a $3,600 MacBook Pro, and it keeps shutting off for no reason. Like 2-3 times a day, it just goes and shuts off. Back to Shorter. So Shorter starts to do this more and more. And he realizes if I had another truck and another driver, I could do this a lot. So he goes out. Now he's also got extra money. So it starts with $2,000-$3,000 extra a month he's doing it for. He goes out, he buys another truck, he gets another driver. He then starts doing all the billing. He starts adding more stuff on the other driver. I think he ends up with 1 or 2 extra trucks. Maybe I might end up with 3 trucks. Over the course of 3 or 4 years, 2-3 years, whatever it was, he ends up overbilling them by $4 million. I'm almost positive it was like 3.9. It was close to 4. I remember it was almost 4 million, because I remember thinking he got basically about 1 year per $1 million. And I remember thinking that's worth it. Eventually, one of his drivers realizes what's happening. He goes and opens his own company, gets a contract with Johnson & Johnson, starts doing the overbilling immediately, and gets caught. Well, the feds come in, they grab him. It's a federal crime because Johnson & Johnson is a nationwide company. It's interstate commerce. So they grab him. Well, he immediately says, look, I learned how to do this from this guy. He's been doing it for years. So they grab Shorter. They look through his stuff. Immediately, Shorter says, okay, this is what I did. Shorter, of course, immediately says, look, this guy helped me. This guy was in on it. So the whole thing unravels. Shorter ends up, he gets indicted. He gets sentenced. They let him turn himself in at the gate. So he actually turns himself in, which, it always kills me. So look, by the time I'm talking to him, I mean, he'd been locked up maybe 2 weeks before he keeps coming in the library, and he keeps seeing me in there with other guys writing down stuff. He sees me writing notes. He sees me doing things. So he thinks I do legal work. He eventually approaches me after 2-3 weeks, and he comes to me and he says, look, do you do legal work? And I went, no. And he said, oh, okay. Do you know anything about legal? He goes, well, what are you doing? I go, I write guys stories. And he goes, oh, okay. And then he goes, do you know anything about legal work? And I went, yeah, I mean, I'd been locked up at that point maybe 8 or 9 years. And I said, yeah, I mean, I know about legal work. I mean, I've read enough briefs, and I've seen the process, and I've gone through the process several times, and I understand the basic concepts, and I understand how the federal court system is structured. So I said, yeah. I said, could I write a brief? Probably. I said, but I really haven't. I've typically relied on other people, and I've read through their stuff and corrected it, and I've been a participant in my own defense and in my own legal strategies, but I don't consider myself like a jailhouse lawyer. And a lot of those guys are just idiots, but there's a ton of them that are better lawyers in prison than there are on the street. Shorter says to me, well, let me tell you what happened and see what you think. And I went, all right, man, what's up? And he says, okay, here's what happened. I own a trucking company. And so he lays out the story that I just laid out for you. And then eventually he gets caught and he gets sentenced, and he got sentenced and he got, it wasn't quite 4 years. I'm going to say 4 years, but it wasn't quite 4 years. I remember it was roughly 4 years. It was maybe a little shy of 4 years, and it was a little shy of 4 million, because I remember when I started doing it, in my head I thought, you got 4 million, let's say 4 million for 4 years. And I thought, that's a lot of people would do a year in Coleman prison for $1 million. I'll go do 2 or 3 years for $1 million. I mean, that's a ton of money. And he had restitution. He had to pay back the money, but they charge you the money that you have to pay back based on what you make. So maybe he had to pay 20% of his income, or 15. Some of these judges give 10, 15%. I know guys that got like 10%. Like, oh, I have to pay. This is ridiculous. This is a fucking scam call. I guarantee it. Hello?
This is an urgent message for the vehicle owner. We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
Fucking scammers. Let me tell you something. These people should be in prison. It's nonstop. I get like 3 a day, at least 3 or 4. Shorter explains the whole thing, and he got, let's say, I'll round up, let's say 4 years for $4 million. And I was like, okay, 4 years for $4 million. I said, all right, so what's up? He goes, well, what do you think I should do? That's a decent sentence. You did okay. He goes, well, what do you mean, bro? He said, I shouldn't be here with all these guys. I mean, he's looking around. I mean, and I'm like, I liked Shorter because he wasn't really fronting like he was a badass. he was a black guy, but he wasn't pretending like he was a street guy. He was like, and I go, well, what did you think was going to happen? He goes, they could have given me probation. They couldn't give him probation. If you actually look at the federal sentencing guidelines, based on where he scored out, he couldn't get probation. I mean, he would have to get a reduction for him to have gotten probation. And although he did cooperate, he didn't get what's called a 5K1. He didn't get his sentence reduced. He just cooperated, and they didn't give it to him. I mean, lots of people cooperate and they just don't give you anything. Like, you unravel your situation. You say, yeah, look, I did this, this person helped, this person helped. This is what this is what this person did. And a lot of times they just don't indict those people. Some guy who's verifying your employment to get a loan on a mortgage or on a personal loan or a business loan, and he's verifying your employment, and he's a buddy of yours, but you came up with the pay stubs and he just verifies it, they're not going to charge that person. Unless it's an ongoing thing where he's been verifying it for 10 years and he's getting part of the scam, then they go, okay, well, we're going to indict him too. But typically they're just not going to indict someone like that. They're like, I mean, he answered the phone 3 or 4 times, and it's not a big deal. If you ask your secretary to fudge some numbers or something like that once or twice, or she knows about it, they're typically not going to indict her. That's what basically happened with Shorter. He was trying to get cooperation, but he just didn't. So the point is that I was like, look, you did okay. I mean, that's where you fell. That's where, 4 million, 4 years, that's reasonable. And he's like, no, that's bullshit, man. I'm not a criminal. I'm a good person. And I said, I understand. I said, look, nobody thinks they're a criminal. I don't feel like a criminal. But, if enough people say you're an asshole, you're probably an asshole. And I got enough people saying I'm a con man that you basically at some point have to say, yeah, I can see it. So my point is this. So Shorter goes, well, I want to file something. I'm going to try and get this overturned. I want to get out on probation and just get probation or house arrest. House arrest is almost unheard of. Like, now they're putting people on house arrest because of COVID. But before, nobody's getting house arrest. You might get 6 months. If somebody got like a year or 18 months, it's just insane. But you have to be like a doctor and be rich to get 18 months and be barely guilty to get some kind of a home confinement. Okay, so here's what happens with Shorter. This is what happened. He goes, so you don't think I should file? Because he said, that guy Frank, he does legal work and he doesn't charge anything. What do you think about him? I said, he's fucking insane. I said, but he's amazing too. And I said, he got 12 years off my sentence. And so Shorter's like, what? And he's like, oh my God. Well, so what should I do? And I go, what do you want to do? He goes, I'm thinking about talking to Frank and filing. And I go, I definitely think you should file. And he goes, you think I should file? I go, absolutely. No, you should file what's called a 2255, which means your attorney was ineffective. There's various reasons, but the bulk of them is that your attorney was ineffective. He said, oh, okay. And he said, well, how does that work? I went, it works like this. First they file it. I said, and that's going to take 3 to 6 months to prepare the document because Frank's behind. You're going to have to get your transcripts. You're going to have to get the police reports. You're going to have to get certain documents for Frank to be able to structure an argument. He's going to have to do research, and they'll put it together. One of his guys will put it together. Frank will write it. One of his guys will type it up. You'll have to review it. It's going to take some time. I said, so you're looking at, let's say, 6 months. 4 months. 4 months, best case scenario. So 4 months. You file the document. Then the judge has about 60 days, it depends on the district, but 30 to 60 days to review the document. So they'll review it, and if they don't just kick it out, they'll basically say, okay, look, he's got an argument. Then they'll tell the U.S. Attorney's Office, or the government, they'll tell the government they have to respond. And they'll give them 60 days to respond. So you got 4 months plus 2 months. Government has 2 months. Now we're at 8 months. I said, so the government will wait 60 days, and then they'll request an additional 60 days. The judge will give it to them. Now we got another 6 months. It's 10 months. And he's like, okay. You tell it's just crushing him. It's killing him, knowing he's got to spend 10 more months in prison. I said, so then at 10 months, you'll get the response. You'll then have to file what's called a retort, and you can file a retort saying that they misconstrued this, or they stated your argument incorrectly, or they argued the wrong facts, or whatever the case may be. But, so then that'll take Frank at least 60 to 90 days. So now I said, so it's going to be a year. He's like, okay. And I said, so then the government will respond to that. The judge will review the document. He'll give them, 3 to 4 months to respond. They'll take 3 to 4 months. They may even ask for an extension. He goes, okay. So then the judge will get it, and he'll hold it, and he just has to make a decision based on a reasonable amount of time. Well, a reasonable amount of time could be anything. It could be 6 months. I know guys that have waited years for their 2255s to be reviewed by a judge. But let's say the judge is reasonable, and he rules within 3 months. You're at this point, you're 3 to 4 months. You're basically at 18 months at this point. And Shorter's like, okay. I said, so at that point, you're going to get a denial. And he goes, what? I go, yeah, they're going to deny it because 3,500 2255s are filed with only one of those documents actually getting relief. So it's a 1 in 3,500 chance, I said, and you actually have a pretty reasonable sentence, and you're guilty, and it's probably obvious that you're guilty, and I don't know that you have an argument, so they're going to deny it. I said, but don't worry. I said, Frank's going to immediately appeal it. He almost always does. So he's going to appeal it for you. He'll appeal it. Takes about 60 days. It's going to make about 3 or 4 months for him to appeal. Then it's going to take the government. Then the government has to respond. They get 2 or 3 months. Then you have to respond to that. And Shorter's like, okay. I said, so then eventually it'll get up the chain, and the appellate court will eventually deny it. By this point, I said, you're probably at about 2 years. This point, you're probably at 2 years before you get your final denial. And Shorter goes, what are you saying? I went, what do you mean? He goes, you think it's going to get denied? I go, yeah, it's going to get denied. I said, and he goes, so why would I even file it if it's going to get denied? I said, well, because there is a chance that maybe you'll get relief. I don't think you'll get relief. I don't think you deserve relief. I said, but while this whole process is happening, you'll be able to lay in bed at night thinking that any minute now the judge is going to grant an evidentiary hearing, or the judge is going to toss your sentence out, or the judge is going to grant some type of relief, or the government's going to come to you and offer you a deal. All the while this is happening, you get to lay in bed and you have the hope that you may be released any minute now. And you get to talk about it. You get to prepare those documents. It gives you these little tiny goals to get you through your time. He goes, yeah, but you don't think I'm going to win. I went, well, no, I don't. But I think that you got 4 years. On 4 years, you do about 3.5. But let's say he had 3.5. I said, so you'll have done 2 years. you'll have a year and a half to go because you get gain time, what's called gain time, off your sentence immediately. So I said, by the 2-year mark, you'll have 18 months to go. They'll be putting you in for halfway house. You'll get 6 months to a year halfway house because you're really just a citizen that fucked up. And so you're probably going to get 6 months to a year halfway house. So let's say you'll have 6 months left to do. And after 2 years, knowing you only have 6 months more to go, you'll know you can do that because you just did 2 years. And it's the hope that will get you through. And he goes, that's fucking horrible, bro. Why would you even tell me that? Why would you tell me to file if I can't win? I mean, it's ridiculous. And I went, bro, I said, what did you think this is do you think this is fucking a fantasy? Do you think we're living in fucking dreamland? You think this is fantasy land? I go, bro, you stole $4 million. You got to do some fucking time. Now, I said, file the documents. Let the hope pull you through it until you know I can do the last 6 months. I get to go to a halfway house. I get to start over. That's hope. But let me tell you what Shorter did. He filed the 2255. And every time I walked by him on the sidewalk, he smiled at me and he would say, I just got the response from the government. I go, what'd they say? He goes, fucking, they said this and they said that and they said that. And we talk about it. And I got to watch him for 2 years talk to other people about his case. Because when your case is going on, it's all consuming. It's all you can think about. So he would read books and he would talk about his case and he talked to his family on the phone and they kept thinking, it also kept them going, well, what's the judge going to say? Well, what this? Well, and he would say, well, if this happens, then this will happen. Well, if this happens, then they would get these little disappointments, but it carried them through. It was the hope. It was false hope. Regardless, it's what got him through it. I remember watching him. He basically left just before me. He was leaving. He's like, I'm going to the halfway house. And I was like, are you? And he was like, yeah. He started laughing. Okay, so I was briefly interrupted by a phone call from my ex-wife, but I might break this up into 2 videos. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. You never know what I'm going to do. You just don't know. I don't know. I'm going to get in there and see how it came all out, and maybe it works out good. We'll see. I don't know. Back to hope. I almost sneezed. I got to sneeze. Oh my God. Feels so good after a sneeze. Like, it's just, like a little goosebumps, and it just feels so good. I wonder what sneezing does that makes you feel so good. Basically, in Shorter's case, hope is what got him through. Like, he was literally, I remember he was going to the halfway house, or I would see him along the way, and he would tell me, how the government just filed this, or we're doing this or doing that. I mean, he eventually got denied and just kind of laughed it off, because at that point he realized, I can do it. I can do the rest of the time. They put him for a halfway house, and I remember he was leaving for a halfway house, and he was like, see ya, Cox. It's funny how much he laughed and how he was always smiling and what good spirits he was in almost the entire time during his prison sentence. And I personally think that had a lot to do with the fact that he was going through the motions of preparing those documents. And then you get to lay in bed at night and you get to daydream about being released and things going your way. But in the end, I mean, it's really just, time will pass and it's hope that gets you through, and that's what happens, and that's what got him through. And he eventually, I'll bet he's doing amazing right now. I mean, getting out and having a felony doesn't stop you from being a trucker, or we'd have no truckers. So I have no doubt that he is most likely running a trucking company right now. This was a detour. This is a learning experience. With that said, subscribe, hit the button, hit the like. Hit the like? Is that a thing? It's like hit the thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up and leave a comment. And I try and respond to almost all the comments. Although I think, sometimes I'll go several days. Periodically, I'll realize I haven't responded to one in like a week or two, and I'll respond. I'll try and respond as quickly as possible, but I mean, I'm doing just lots of stuff, and sitting down and responding is, I do it when I can. What else? Share the video, tell a friend, watch it twice, including the commercials. I mean, this takes time. like you have to understand, for every hour of video, it takes 3 hours of editing, unless you just let it run with all the screw up. But even then, it's importing it. Then you have to import it, or then you have to upload it to YouTube. That takes forever. I have horrible Wi-Fi service here, so it takes hours to upload a 15 or 20 minute video. That's it. I'm done. I'm out. See ya.